good. I would like to have the panelists join me. Apologies, I had to get my. Um, this is a good panel to have after the presentation before that helped us to get into the topic of using unlicensed spectrum for either LTE or Wi Fi. In this panel, we'll talk about how LTE and Wi Fi will coexist in unlicensed spectrum. We're talking about LTEU, LAA, and LWA, and I think that by now you're familiar with that. And I have here with me Femi Adeyemi, lead LTE Solutions Architect at Fujitsu, Puneet Sethi, Director of Product Management at Qualcomm, Michael Hogan, Senior Director of Small Cells and Wireless IoT at Broadcom, and Farook Hussan, Direct Customer Solutions at Senza. So I'm going to ask some questions, but I would like to have some questions from you. And I actually have a special request. If anybody from the enterprise has any questions, I think it would be interesting to hear, well, not just your questions, but also your perspective on this. Because here we have all the vendors. We heard a lot from operators. The enterprise is the part that is a little bit more quiet on this, and I think that they have an important role to play. So there are different ways in which operators can use unlicensed spectrum, and what has become clear, as we heard before, is that the unlicensed spectrum is incredibly valuable in terms of helping us to leverage all the assets for densifying the infrastructure. So it's an absolutely crucial element, and the operators have been taking a lot of advantage through offload already. So most of the traffic in our mobile devices actually goes through Wi Fi today. Something probably in the order of 80%, there are different estimates, but most of the traffic is already going through unlicensed spectrum. So whatever LAA, LTEU, or LWA will do, it's incremental. But the fact is today, mobile operators already are taking advantage. What is different with LAA, LTEU, or LWA is that mobile operators will take a more active role in using that spectrum. So it's not just taking advantages because you have already Wi-Fi at home or in the office, but they will go and put out the infrastructure to do so, have all that access really integrated in their network. That is new. It's a powerful way to go about using and really leveraging that spectrum. So it's all quite exciting, but it's also stirring a lot of how can I say, a lot of discussion in the industry in terms of how this is going to pan out. So what I would like to do is to first ask you, what is your role within this the LAA, LTEU, and LWA? A quick introduction for yourself, and then I'm going to have some questions, and then we'll open to the audience. Okay. Femi, do you want to get started?
Femi from Fujitsu. We are primarily a provider of equipment to the operators. And from the user community, what the users are interested in, they don't really care what the technology is, whether it's on-license or license. They want high speed, they want high data throughput, quality of service. And so if we're able to provide that at low cost, they're very, very interested. So for us, it's to be able to satisfy the customer by leveraging as much of that on-license spectrum as possible. Whether that is through LAA or LWA, it's actually not relevant. It's to just make sure that we satisfy the customer in terms of being able to get them high speed, and for the operator, so that's on the user side. From the operators, they're very concerned about two things. One is the expense of spectrum. So now we want to leverage something that is on-license. I'm telling you, they're very, very happy about that. Although they've acquired a lot of spectrum, but here we come with something that they don't have to pay for. Very, very good. The second thing is the introduction of a separate core with Wi-Fi into their cage. Very scary. So previously when we talk about carrier Wi-Fi, operators are very, I don't know how to manage it. With using the same core, LTE core, and being able to introduce Wi-Fi into their process, it's a very attractive thing. So we're coming from both sides, the users as well as the operator, to make sure that we satisfy the demands of cost, the demands of high data throughput.
Thanks, Monica. So I agree with Femi said. I think, Monica, you mentioned operators are using Wi-Fi. So the operators that already have investments in the Wi-Fi core network, they're leveraging Wi-Fi today. But some of the operators don't have that, like Femi pointed out. So I agree with that point. I am Puneet Sethi. I'm part of the small cell product management team at Qualcomm. Within Qualcomm, we focus on bringing a series of baseband and radio solutions and work with our partners and OEMs to bring those products to market. And as part of that, we also focus on driving new innovation into the small cell products, baseband radios, and software. That includes SON technologies, ultrasound suite of solution, and also LTE LAA technologies to leverage unlicensed spectrum.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Hogan, and I'm here with Broadcom. I manage our small cell business. We build small cell platforms, particularly in the context of this discussion. Every one of these technologies that manages to get access to the unlicensed band is sort of built on a platform that allows for some form of carrier aggregation. So there's a lot of controversy out there as to what type of sharing is most appropriate, most fair between Wi-Fi and LTE. Our view is that we build a platform on which the industry can decide, exactly what the right kind of sharing should be. And I think, we can see a spectrum of more sharing all the way up to something that we'll demo at lunch that shows kind of almost a pure native Wi-Fi coexistence. And our view is that we're not going to dictate to an industry what they should do, but we give you a platform on which we can demonstrate the pluses and minuses of this ever-evolving set of specs and try to find that right balance between spectral efficiency and fairness to the fact that, as Monica mentioned, 80% of the traffic is running on Wi-Fi. Who wants to put a solution out that's going to put that in jeopardy? That's sort of a non-starter for our industry, I think, is our position.
I'm Farook Hussan with Samsung. I echo the points that have been said about common core and common management that uses licensed and unlicensed spectrum. Samsung has been deploying enterprise small cells in the USA for the last 7 or 8 years. It's totally plug and play, and it's been CDMA for so many years. Now we are moving over to LTE as well. And we want to bring products that's LTU, LAA, LWA, that solves unique problems of carriers that uses unlicensed spectrum and solve their spectrum challenge.
Okay, so to get started, I think it would be useful to give an update out on the standardization efforts. So the fact that LTE in the unlicensed band and Wi-Fi have to coexist, I think we don't need to do that. We can move forward. And I think that there is a lot of indication that everybody in the industry is really trying to work together to find a solution. And it's an interesting problem because it's a relatively new problem to have different technologies to work in the same band. Because it's true that in the 5 gigahertz band, it's not just Wi-Fi already. So it's not, and it's obviously a technology neutral band. But it has never been such a big issue in terms of really having two technologies to coexist so close to each other and for similar. So it's quite interesting from a standardization point of view how we're going to solve this problem, because it's going to be probably an issue that we're going to deal in the future on a wider scale. So I wonder if you can give us a sense of where are we going? Are we going to agree, or is it going to be a polarization from different vendors, different operators, or different players? There was a meeting recently in China where 3GPP invited IEEE, so that seems like it's a good sign. So can you comment on how's that going?
I'll take it. So I think consensus, in my mind, I think consensus is critical. And I'm sure several stakeholder bodies are conducting their own sort of evaluation to make sure that coexistence algorithms that is proposed by LTE or LAA forum is truly peaceful and doesn't victimize the other technology. Wi-Fi Alliance published recently some of the tests they're going to do, and the HC BRAN body is involved in the LAA standards process now. IEEE is involved as well. So I think the consensus will have to take place before a proper listen before talk algorithm is agreed upon by all the stakeholders. And just a quick point, I think there's a lot of activity in the 3GPP forum on that particular aspect on finalizing the listen before talk. Drafts are due end of this year. Hopefully we'll have standards released by March or April next year.
So I agree with what Farook said on the activity in 3GPP, and then that's one way to leverage unlicensed spectrum, LAA, and then there are other activities in 3GPP, the LWA, which is also part of the topic here, that's also 3GPP release 13 items, so that will also evolve with the standardization process. Then for North America, there are two other activities, the LTEU specs standardized by the LTE forum, which the different stakeholders are interacting and evolving, so that there are specs that are going to come from that. And then in the workshop yesterday, Google presented an update on what's going on in the 3.5 gigahertz and how Open Forum is coming up with specs and rules for that. So I think that will be another piece of how more semi-licensed spectrum is going to be available for operators and other parties to leverage.
Yeah, so I think our position on this is pretty clear. I think the industry's been served well by the standards body process that's incredibly transparent and open to all. I think that the more we have of that, the better the solution we get to. When you have something that's closed to the vast majority of technology providers, I'm not sure how you get to the right answer. So I sense that we're drifting kind of towards that direction, which is positive. And maybe in the end, things like the forum are an interesting catalyst to kind of get the conversation moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's probably even more than just listen before talk. I mean, there's things you can do beyond LBT that make coexistence a non-issue. And I think everybody in this room, if they had started with the preface or the premise that if you could have LTE in the unlicensed band and have no detrimental impact on Wi-Fi, everyone's hand would go up and say, I'll take some of that. And that absolutely is possible. It's absolutely possible.
So what are the things that you can do on top of?
We'll demo some of it at lunch. It should come to that. But I mean, this idea that it's just about what level you detect energy, or detecting a preamble, or listen before talk. Every step in that direction is correct, but you can be even more polite. You can essentially mimic the behavior of Wi-Fi, and the fact that when you go to transmit, you speak LTE, can be completely transparent to your Wi-Fi network. And if you spent millions of dollars as an IT guy, because we're talking about enterprise, to get your Wi-Fi network tuned and right and working and no more service tickets, why would anybody take a risk that would go the other direction? And it's possible. I'm just saying, open your mind to the possibility. Where the whole group, the whole industry winds up landing, we'll all live with, because that'll be the consensus. But don't close your mind to the idea that this can be completely transparent. We really think it can be.
I'm actually optimistic. For the first time in a long time, there are consensus on both sides. We want to see LTE leverage the unlicensed spectrum. And the different working groups are working very hard to resolve the different problems that we're talking about, LBT, how do we share the spectrum. I want to go on the limb and say by the second half of 2016, we will have a spec that everybody can build to, everybody can test to, so that these problems that we're talking about will not be an issue, and we can move forward with the unlicensed spectrum with LTE.
So let's talk a little bit about LTEU with respect to LAA. Is LTEU the sort of like prior to LAA, alternative to LAA, or and is there a path of an upgrade path, software upgrade, hardware upgrade path from LTU to LAA? And just to, LTU is this technology that works in the US and a few other countries, but in some countries where they require listen before talk, that's not going to be a feasible solution. So it's, but it's also true that that's something that in the short term is going to be more readily available in countries where that's legally, from a regulatory point of view, it's feasible. So what's your view on the relationship between the two?
Right. Go
So I think, like you mentioned, Monica, in some countries, U.S. and some of the other areas where we have the opportunity to bring this LTE to one license earlier and provide operators with the opportunity to leverage that. So that's so there is an industry body, LTE Forum, work that's a collection of various stakeholders, operators, OEMs, silicon vendors, and so that's been driving specs that have been published openly, and then as part of that, there has been further process where different industry players have been invited and they have provided feedback, and the specs are evolving based on that. So I think that provides an opportunity and a product for North American operators to leverage unlicensed earlier. The question on the upgrade to LA, I think that is an objective that I think as an industry we should have, that to provide an upgrade path to LA, but a lot of that depends on how the 3GPP specs firm up as the process within 3GPP plays out.
Okay. Now, any other comments or good?
Yeah, I think the only other comment on LTEU is, as a platform provider, we don't speak for what our customers want to do. I think any of these schemes can be implemented on the platforms. So I don't want to misspeak, but I think honestly, if you look at the time it takes to roll this stuff out, it would be hard to imagine, the pace that the industry has gone in terms of deploying small cells. Remember, the footprint of LTE small cells is quite small. The footprint of LTE small cells that can do carrier aggregation, even smaller. So, I don't know that there is this massive rush to get something out that's premature and not completely consensus-based. I think, if you look at the natural pace of the industry, the things that are going on in Release 13, and the movements in LTEU specs and in the discussions with Release 13, will get us a solution in the time frame that we can actually go and implement it. And the idea that we can make it go faster than it's ever gone because we just would like it to, probably will wind up, where most of those ideas wind up, which would seem like a good idea, but it was probably not possible for nothing to do with LTEU versus LAA. Just the natural rollout of this equipment doesn't go as fast as everybody in this room would like it to, otherwise, there'd be more people in the room.
Yeah, and I guess that there is the issue of the infrastructure, so that's all the standardization and the deployment side, but the devices is also another big issue for LTE unlicensed, because you do need to have new handsets. It's not that expensive, it's feasible, it's all, but you still, that takes time to get through the cycle where people just start having the new devices. So do you see, both for LTEU, specifically for LTEU, but also for LTE unlicensed, LAA, the commitment from the device vendors to have devices out there that are commercially available?
Well, I think the only device vendors, we use that word plural, would have to be on the LAA side, right, on the Release 13. I'm not aware that there are plural chipset vendors in the forum.
So
your question was the OEM, device OEM, or?
The devices, yeah. Not the chip. I know you guys have the solution, but we have not heard. We have heard mobile operators committed to deploy the unlicensed LAA, but we haven't heard the device vendors yet. what should we read into that? Is there any indication that will they have an LTE handset, given that it's only for a few a relatively small number of countries in the world?
I think the key for device manufacturers is how many of this do I need to make? How do I make money from making these chipsets available? Then that rolls back into a standard. Because if I go and build devices that are only used by a specific sector of the public, then I'm not going to make as much money as I would like to. So I believe once we have a consensus in terms of the specs, we will see more of that coming from the device side to support LTE in the unlicensed space. Because I'm sure device builders, they're not interested in, I make this chip and then I have to switch to this one and to the other one. So the standardization of the spectrum and what it does is very key to device manufacturers doing it on a large scale at a global level.
Okay. So I guess we will see it in due time. And so what about LTE handset? Is there any commitment that we know about it for the handset point of view? Or?
I can't speak for the OEMs, but yeah, so I think we are driving FSM, which is our small cell chipset, to support, roadmap to support both LTE and LAA, and also similar support on our MSM chipset. So I think Nick, in his slide earlier, referred to the part numbers for both MSM and FSM. So we're getting the pieces together on our deliverables. I would say though that the impact on LTU is somewhat more on the base station side. So there's more work to be done there. I'm not trying to say that there is no impact on the UV side, but because it's a supplemental downlink, so the base station is only when transmitting. So there is significant impact there. So we're sort of working and driving those solutions to market.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, the really heavy lifting is on the infrastructure side rather than on the device. Now,
to generalize the devices situation, if the standards mature and there's a carrier's request, all device manufacturers will bring devices. And the objective, as Puneet mentioned, is to bring LTU products that are software upgradable to LA as much as the standards allow. That's the target that everyone is working towards.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about LWA, and I think that it's a very interesting idea, and it has not got as much attention as LAA, but it's interesting because it achieves a lot of what LAA is trying to do, basically to aggregate, to enable mobile operator to actively use unlicensed spectrum, but it does so without necessarily requiring a handset change. So that sort of simplifies, eliminates one issue from the complexity. But there are two things that I wanted to ask you. First of all, is it true that you can use the current handsets for LWA, because that is something that has been discussed within 3GPP. And the second is, how do you see LWA to play in relationship to LAA? So is it going to be an alternative? Is it going to be the first step before we get into LAA? Or what's the relationship between